best job ever, because I think it presupposes that question, is being a time traveler. That's what I enjoy the most, and I'm going to take you time traveling now. I'm going to take you on a journey through time, starting in about the year 1900, when they predicted the future of education to look like this. This is the year 2000 in education, where the teacher would feed all the material into a machine, some kind of paper crunching machine, because back then they didn't have quite a vision for digital in terms of input, but they certainly had the vision for digital in output. And the idea was that you could feed digital directly into the brain. In other words, you could pump information into people's brains. Hold that thought while I take you 110 years into the future. This is quite a zippy time machine. This is a map of the world that I show quite often in my presentations. The next one is one that you may also have seen if you've attended any of my presentations. This is the Facebook map of the world in 2010, showing the intensity of human connectivity in that year. And the significance of that map is just how dark Africa was in terms of connectivity. We really were barely connected to the world. Only Gauteng, a bit of the Rift Valley in Kenya, and a little bit of Nigeria was connected, and the rest of Africa was dark. And then in 2009, a miracle happened, a miracle at sea. A new undersea cable was connected to Africa, and suddenly, not more bandwidth, but more competition arrived. And that resulted in an explosion of connectivity, further cables, competitive services, and a new user base coming online over the next 3 years. So by 2013, that was the Facebook map of the world, truly like turning on a light. And if you look at Africa, South America, and India, you see the intensification of connectivity through two main processes. One was availability of connectivity across those continents and subcontinents, but also in India and Brazil's case, a plummeting cost of accessing the internet through cheap data. India is among the cheapest data in the world, and the effects can be seen in the intensity of use. But now the next map of the world, this, by the way, is something Facebook releases every 3 years or so. They haven't released a 2016 version, but luckily for us, Mark Zuckerberg gave a talk at Mobile World Congress in February, which we'll come back to shortly, but where he briefly flashed a map onto the presentation screen, and a photographer from Reuters was on hand to snap it very quickly. And this is what happened from 2013 to 2016. It's an astonishing intensification of the use of the internet, and showed what happened when availability and price are no longer factors. Even in South Africa, we have the Data Must Fall campaign at the moment, but if you have the means and you buy a big bundle of data, data has fallen. It's only, ironically, the poorest who can't afford data, because for them, it's the highest price. So data for the poor must fall, in fact. That's really the last barrier to complete saturated adoption of the internet on this continent. But what these three maps represent also is the variable future that is faced by most people in Africa and the different forms of access that they have. So some will have this kind of education still for the foreseeable future, because they won't have access to infrastructure or digital means that bring the classroom and the future technology together. This was quite recently in Limpopo province. What happened here, in fact, was because the schools were too far away, parents got together and employed teachers to teach their kids in their own environment. Partly what was happening was children were walking to school and being attacked or going missing while they were on their way to school. So this is the solution. The government's response to this, naturally, was to threaten the parents and teachers with legal action. Obviously, that's how you deal with an education crisis. Others will have this. This is a Samsung solar-powered internet school, a classroom in a container. Samsung and Dell are amongst the leaders, and a few other companies as well, in putting these kind of container schools into rural areas, into previously disadvantaged areas and the like. This particular one is near Tembisa. So not quite an isolated area, but certainly an underserved area. This is what the classroom looks like inside. It looks very cool until you pack it with kids, and suddenly you realize the extent to which this is just a makeshift solution. This is hardly a world-class education, even if they each have a laptop in front of them. That laptop does not really represent true and full immersion in the technological possibilities of the future. And then you have this. This is the Washington Leadership Academy in the United States. Their advertisement for kids to come to their school is a child using a virtual reality device to look into the future. See the future, be the future, it says. More important is their mission statement. And the key phrase in the mission statement is that they want to produce graduates who will be passionate, generative. In other words, they come up with concepts themselves, concepts and ideas. Tech-enabled citizens with a commitment, and this is the real key, to changing the world. We are focused on an education where we want children to find a path into the world, to find a job in this changing world, to be educated for 21st century jobs. What this academy is doing is wanting to produce kids who shape that world, and they will define the jobs that they go into. They're not going to wait for somebody to bring jobs to them or to see if they'll fit in to a world that is still based on 19th century education. And they will be using augmented reality, virtual reality, holograms, artificial intelligence, and the like. But the key to it is to inspire a love of learning and a growth mindset. It's the mindset that's important for them, not necessarily the technology. So this was the moment when Mark Zuckerberg walked onto stage at the Mobile World Congress in February. Everyone was immersed in their Samsung Gear VR headsets, and when they pulled off their headsets, a piece of magic happened. Suddenly, the world's richest kid appeared on stage in front of them. So virtual reality is very powerful. But really, the significance of that talk was that for the first time, it put virtual reality into the mainstream debate of how social media will be used in the future, but also how education will be delivered in the future. But aside from the expensive headsets that the haves will have, there's also virtual reality for the have-nots. These are examples of Google Cardboard. And I don't know if Graham has already spoken to you about cardboard today, because I know it's one of his favorite toys. But this shows the different versions of cardboard that are available and the incredible range of prices. Starting at $5, the one in the top left-hand corner is on sale for $5. Now, what Google Cardboard made possible was for the mass distribution of virtual reality. So we think of virtual reality as a first world, privileged kind of tool, but in fact, one single event showed the world that virtual reality could be for everybody. And that was on the 7th of November last year, when the New York Times gave away a Google Cardboard headset to every one of its home subscribers, 1 million users. Suddenly 1 million people had virtual reality for free. So yes, you had to be a subscriber, you had to be one of the haves, but what it shows us is what's possible in terms of distributing virtual reality to almost anyone. I'll come back to that in a moment, but just to show you what the New York Times did with that, they made an app available on the Android Play Store and the Apple App Store, and they began producing virtual reality news. And this is just one example during the Olympics, a virtual reality treatment of the evolution of the modern Olympic Games. Really beautifully done, beautifully executed, and a great example of using virtual reality to deliver information, news, and the like. And clearly, with an indicator towards using it for education as well. But to me, what's more exciting in virtual reality is augmented reality. This was augmented reality entering the mainstream, people discovering that they couldn't access the Pokemon Go server because all of North America's school kids had logged on at the same time at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, South Africa time. But now they've all gone back to school, so you can all check if there's a Pokestop here, and you can catch a few Pokemon monsters. But really the significance of Pokemon Go is that it showed the world just how easy augmented reality could be. Not necessarily to execute it, but to consume it and to use it. But this is real augmented reality in the real world for real positive purposes. Quite an elaborate version of it. A company called Curiscope have created this virtual T-shirt with a diagram of a skeleton on it, but when you point your phone at it with the app from Curiscope activated on the phone, you can start exploring the human body. Not that person's own body, so if you're trying to probe beneath the surface, you're not in luck, but that may come in the future, of course. What this points to is not the fact that you can check someone's insides through their T-shirt. It points to the kind of uses of augmented reality using clever implementation of the technology and a simple smartphone with the app activated on the phone. This is a different approach to augmented reality. I'm not showing the person's glasses in this image, but the person's wearing a pair of glasses that looks like a fairly ordinary set of glasses, just not very stylish. And what it enables them to do is use that pen to activate content on a regular computer screen and make that content appear to come alive and appear in mid-air as a hologram or as a floating image. And it's quite dramatic when you watch kids at play on this kind of thing, the excitement that they experience. And part of the appeal of that from an educational point of view is that it brings a level of excitement to teaching that dissecting a frog never could. And of course, you don't want kids dissecting human hearts in the classroom either. This is taking it to a virtual reality perspective. A company called Immersive VR Education are creating VR courses. So in this example, it's ER training for paramedics and for doctors and nurses. It was commissioned by the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, and it's an indication of how global these kind of tools have become and how global the initiatives are. This is Eon Experience AVR and their online library of virtual reality and augmented reality applications that anyone can download and use. And this is what it looks like in the classroom. So the real problem is, how does the teacher control this? Well, part of it is that they want the kids to learn by doing. So the teacher's not controlling it. The kids themselves are controlling their own experience of education. This is a university in Czechoslovakia, sorry, a school in Czechoslovakia. If the English on the screen looks weird, it's because I used Google Translate to make it understandable to you. But it's a regular high school that's introduced a virtual reality program, and they've implemented something called the World of Comenius, which you can look up online. It's a dazzling virtual reality educational experience, and this is kids at work or at play in the classroom. This is the cheap version of doing the same thing. A company called Nearpod VR are using Google Cardboard, branded, so you can get companies to sponsor it and give it for free to an entire school. So 2 schools in America are already using a Nearpod VR. The problem with these images is what? The problem is you're still force-feeding information into people's heads. What is the purpose of the VR? Besides stimulating and educating, the purpose of the AR, you don't just want to replace one form of force feed with another, because learners have to be prepared for a new world, a world of artificial intelligence and of the cobot. Anyone heard of a cobot? A collaborative robot. And that's a phrase you'll hear more and more. This is what many of the workplaces of tomorrow will look like. That's what a cobot looks like, working with a human being. That's a person overseeing a workforce. What's her title? Any guesses? She's a chief robotics officer in this particular organization. That's a doctor at work using a cobot, a virtual surgeon. That's Robear, a robot carer. And that's a robot kitchen from Moley Robots, Moley Kitchens, that is, going mainstream next year. And that is Pepper, a robot that is already working in 14,000 fast food outlets in Japan. The careers that are going to be destroyed by robots and artificial intelligence are the ones that don't require creativity or decision-making. It's not about the tools that we use, but about the attitude. And these are the skills we'll need tomorrow. It's not the ability to use virtual reality or augmented reality. It's problem-solving, creativity, collaboration, negotiation in order to get a team coming to the same conclusion or some consensus, and it's human interaction as a skill, not just as a byproduct of what we're doing. So we've got to stop talking about 21st century learning, and we've got to start building this future. Thank you very much.